Imagine discovering that one of the most famous images in human history was built on a mistake. For generations, people have laughed at Neanderthals, using their name as an insult for someone who seems unintelligent, uncivilized, or hopelessly primitive. Movies portrayed them as club-carrying brutes, cartoons turned them into jokes, and even classrooms repeated the same image until it became something almost nobody questioned. But archaeology has a strange habit of exposing comfortable myths. Every few years, another discovery emerges from beneath layers of ancient earth, forcing scientists to rethink what they thought they already knew. And when all of those discoveries are placed together, they reveal something remarkable. The creatures we mocked for over a century may have been far more capable, adaptable, and surprisingly human than most of us were ever taught. By the end of this documentary, you may realize that the biggest misunderstanding wasn't about Neanderthals at all, it was about us. Surviving today is difficult enough with hospitals, supermarkets, weather forecasts, and technology helping us every single day. Now erase all of it. Imagine waking up in Europe during the Ice Age with freezing temperatures, giant predators roaming the landscape, no permanent shelter, no farming, and no guarantee that your next hunt would succeed. Every sunrise brought a new problem that had to be solved immediately because failure wasn't inconvenient, it was fatal. Finding food required reading animal tracks that had nearly disappeared beneath snow or mud. Crossing rivers demanded understanding dangerous currents without bridges. Choosing where to sleep meant recognizing which caves offered safety and which might already belong to bears or hyenas. Long before written knowledge existed, survival depended on remembering thousands of details about changing seasons, migrating animals, edible plants, dangerous terrain, and weather patterns. None of this happened by instinct alone. It required observation, memory, planning, and the ability to learn from previous generations. One of the oldest assumptions about Neanderthals is that they simply stumbled through life using brute strength instead of intelligence. Yet the archaeological evidence paints a very different picture. Across multiple excavation sites, researchers have uncovered carefully crafted stone tools designed for different purposes rather than one simple weapon for everything. Some were shaped for cutting meat, others for scraping animal hides, while others appear optimized for woodworking. Creating these tools wasn't as simple as smashing two rocks together. A single mistake during production could ruin hours of work and waste valuable material. Before the first strike was even made, the maker had to imagine the final shape hidden inside the stone and remove each fragment in exactly the right sequence. That kind of planning is difficult even with modern demonstrations, yet these techniques were mastered tens of thousands of years before metal tools ever existed. But perhaps the most surprising discovery wasn't hidden inside a tool. It was hidden inside a skeleton. Archaeologists studying Neanderthal remains found individuals who had survived devastating injuries that would have made hunting, gathering, or defending themselves almost impossible. One famous example showed severe disabilities that likely lasted for years rather than days. In a world where every meal demanded enormous physical effort, keeping someone alive who could no longer contribute equally meant sacrificing precious food, time, and energy. That decision tells us something profound. Their communities didn't simply abandon members who became weak. They protected them. They shared resources with them. They cared for them long after survival alone would have justified leaving them behind. Compassion is difficult to measure in archaeology because emotions rarely fossilize, but sometimes the evidence is impossible to ignore. A healed injury isn't just a medical observation. It is proof that someone else stayed, helped, and refused to give up on another human being. The deeper scientists looked, the stranger the old stereotype became. Neanderthals weren't living in a world that remained constant for hundreds of thousands of years. Ice sheets expanded and retreated. Forests transformed into open grasslands before changing once again. Animal populations migrated across continents following shifting climates. Every environmental change forced ancient human groups to rethink where they hunted, where they traveled, and how they survived. Instead of collapsing under these challenges, different Neanderthal populations developed solutions suited to their local environments. Archaeological sites separated by thousands of kilometers often reveal different tool traditions and survival strategies, suggesting these communities adapted to regional conditions instead of relying on one fixed way of life. Flexibility, not stubbornness, appears to have been one of their greatest strengths. Then came another discovery that surprised even experienced researchers. When scientists analyzed microscopic remains preserved inside ancient Neanderthal teeth, they found traces of plants alongside evidence of meat consumption. Some of those plants contained compounds that modern science associates with medicinal properties. Researchers remain careful about drawing conclusions because archaeology rarely provides absolute certainty, but the findings raise an intriguing possibility. These ancient humans may have recognized that certain plants eased discomfort or supported recovery from illness. Whether that knowledge developed through generations of observation or simple experimentation remains uncertain, but either explanation suggests careful attention to the natural world rather than blind survival. The forests surrounding them may have served not only as hunting grounds but also as living libraries filled with knowledge that had to be remembered and passed forward. By now, the familiar image of a clueless cave brute begins to fall apart. We have evidence of long-term planning, specialized craftsmanship, environmental adaptation, shared knowledge, and communities willing to protect vulnerable members despite enormous personal cost. None of these discoveries fit the cartoon version of Neanderthals that became famous during the last century. So why did that image become so powerful in the first place? Why did generation after generation grow up believing these ancient humans shuffled through life bent over, barely capable of thinking? The answer begins with a single archaeological reconstruction, one influential mistake, and a misunderstanding that quietly shaped the world's imagination for more than 100 years. The strange thing is that the image most of us carry in our heads wasn't created by decades of evidence, it was heavily influenced by one early reconstruction. In the early 20th century, scientists worked with one of the first nearly complete Neanderthal skeletons ever discovered. What they didn't realize at the time was that the individual suffered from severe arthritis. The curved spine and bent posture reflected old age and disease, not the normal appearance of an entire species. Yet that single reconstruction spread through museums, textbooks, newspapers, and popular culture, creating an image that survived for generations. First impressions are powerful, especially when they're repeated often enough. By the time better evidence appeared, the stereotype had already become part of the world's imagination. As more discoveries emerged, that old picture became harder to defend. Archaeologists began finding objects that served no obvious purpose for survival alone. Carefully selected feathers, decorated claws, pigments, and other unusual items suggest that Neanderthals may have valued appearance, symbolism, or social identity in ways once believed to belong only to modern humans. We still don't know exactly what these objects meant to them, and scientists continue to debate their purpose, but one thing is becoming increasingly clear: they weren't simply surviving day to day. Like us, they may have cared about things that couldn't be measured only by food or shelter. Then came one of the most astonishing discoveries of all. Deep inside a cave, far beyond the reach of natural sunlight, researchers uncovered carefully arranged stone formations built from broken stalagmites. Reaching that location would have required carrying fire through complete darkness, navigating narrow passages, and working together in an environment that offered no obvious survival advantage. Why they built these structures remains one of archaeology's enduring mysteries. Some researchers suggest ritual activity, while others believe there may be explanations we haven't yet imagined. Whatever the answer, the discovery demonstrates planning, cooperation, and a willingness to explore places that few humans would willingly enter even today. If Neanderthals were capable of planning, adapting, caring for one another, and creating things whose meaning we still struggle to understand, then another question naturally follows. What happened to them? For years, the popular story claimed that modern humans simply arrived and defeated them. Reality appears to have been far more complicated. Climate changed rapidly, animal populations shifted, competition for resources increased, and small isolated populations became more vulnerable to disease and environmental stress. Rather than a single dramatic event, many scientists now believe Neanderthal disappearance resulted from several pressures acting together over thousands of years. Yet perhaps the greatest surprise is that they never completely disappeared. Genetic research has revealed that many people living today carry small amounts of Neanderthal DNA inherited from ancient encounters between our ancestors and theirs. In other words, their story didn't end. It continued inside us. They were never a failed version of humanity or a primitive stepping stone waiting to be replaced. They were another branch of the human family, shaped by different environments, different challenges, and different paths through history. The more we uncover about them, the less they resemble the caricature we inherited from the last century, and the more they remind us that intelligence, compassion, curiosity, and resilience have always taken many different forms. Sometimes the greatest archaeological discovery isn't finding something new beneath the ground. It's realizing that one of our oldest beliefs was never true in the first place.